Well, I think people learn through stories. Like, I think we're always constantly observing other people to figure out how to do things.
Yeah.
Like, how are you making this human being thing work, right?
Mm.
And my motivation in writing this show was partly because I felt like I wasn't seeing a lot of examples in, media and television, film, and story about where open relationships could work. And it feels like every time you talk to somebody, they're like, "Oh, I know somebody who did that, but it didn't." Like they broke up. Blah, blah, blah. And my mother's a marriage counselor, and she and my father have been together 50 years, and so she's very much like, it doesn't work. Polyamory can't work.
Wow.
And she's starting to change, because me and my husband have been together 10 years now.
Okay.
So she's coming around, but I think that was I wanted to share a story in which you get to see the downside, but you also get to see the upside and how it can lead to more love in the world. And it was so funny. I just met this guy at the polyamory meetup, and he was like, he said he would never fall in love. And I was like, why not? And he's like, because that makes you vulnerable. I'm like, that's where the richness lies,
Wow.
And it was so funny. I was like, you have it so backward.
I want to cry.
I know. I just was like, so you know what I did? I took his phone and I pulled up Brené Brown's TED Talk on vulnerability,
Yes.
and I was like, just watch it. It's going to change your life. We can talk about it afterwards. Watch it. Come to the show. We'll talk.
What's driving you to go on this tour? To get up every day on stage in front of people?
Well, to put it in a nutshell, I think that my job in the world is to be a professional vulnerable. I go out there and I tell my story with as much authenticity and rawness as possible. That doesn't mean I haven't changed the names to protect the innocent, but I'm trying to tell a story that in the details feels universal. And it's a story about what it feels like to fall in love and for your partner to want to also love other people, and how scary that is. Like, that is, because I believe and have my whole life in romance and soulmates, and when I met the one, he would only want me. And so this play is a journey about what happens when you meet the one, and it turns out he wanted to also be with other people. And so I really had to go through, well, does that mean he's not the one? Does that, what is, but I love him. And so it's a journey through discovering really what love means to me, and does love depend on lust? And what about all the people who are in long-term relationships and who've stopped having sex? Do they stop loving each other? What can you do about that if you want to stay together but you're not having sex? How do you open a relationship? And so those are all the things I was really curious about. So I feel like my job is a storyteller, and it gives people permission. I feel like my special skill is that I make things palatable. It's a way in to learning about somebody else's life and going, I wonder what that's like, or I would never do that, or but it's not prescriptive. I'm not trying to do a show that's like, yay, poly, everybody should do it, because I don't think they should. Like, I think it works for some people and it really doesn't work for other people. But I wanted to allow for the possibility and give people a story on which to hang their ideas and open their hearts and discuss with their lovers or their spouses.
It's almost sounding like one, the word compersion is coming to mind, which I love, and most people I ask, like, no one's ever even heard of that.
I don't use that word in my show because of that reason. Because I'm like, it's not a common enough word. And what I try to do is show, don't tell. Like, what does it actually look like to have compersion for your lover?
Right. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, but I agree. I mean, that's a huge, what's the word, concept in poly. Like, if you love somebody, can you let them make their own choices and be free and make decisions for themselves and trust?
What is it going to be like to watch the show? Is it like a, I don't know.
So what you'll see is that it starts out where I am. You'll meet me basically first. My alter ego in the show is named Emily, and I start by talking about this idea about soulmates and how it was such a thing for me when I was a kid that I was going to grow up and meet my soulmate. And I take you on this little kind of step-by-step journey through discovering sex and feeling like I had to be good at sex in order to make a boy fall in love with me. And then I, lose my virginity to this guy who wants to have sex all the time, but we're not in love and the sex isn't good. But then I meet this boy, when I'm studying abroad and we're in love and we connect, but the sex isn't great. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And then it turns out he comes out of the closet. And then in the show I discovered Dan Savage, and that's kind of where it all turns. Like, he, opens my mind to all these ideas about sex, and like, you can actually, you have to practice if you want to be good at it. And like the idea of being GGG, the good giving and game. It's a Dan Savage term. And like for me, I really latched onto that. Like, I want to be that. Like, I want to experiment and try things and say yes, and and so I do that all through my 20s. But then I haven't found my soulmate, and I'm still looking for my soulmate. And so that's the first letter to Dan is like, should I stop having casual sex and hold out? And he's like, no. You might meet your soulmate in the sack. You never know. So in the show, I play all the other characters. Mostly, I play the one that's really you'll remember the most is I play my husband, and in the show his name's Matt, and so we meet at Burning Man, and so let's see if I can I'll give you a little piece of that. Like so I'm lost at Burning Man, and I'm like in the swirling dust, and he comes out of the dust and says, hey, fair maiden, looks like you could use some help, and he whisks me off onto his ship, which is a converted school bus with a pirate flag whipping in the wind. Inside, it's like a cozy little room with a bed and a table and this mysterious smell filling the air. And then I light Palo Santo. And he says, welcome to the magic bus. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. Oh, hey, I'm Matt. Can I get you a glass of water, cup of tea, bong hit? My playa name is Captain Carhart, but my superpower is rescuing damsels in distress, and then I ply them with tea and sympathy. Looks like you got some playa dust up your nose. Can I get you a wet wipe? And anyway, so I try to make going in and out of characters really fluid. I think that's one of my strengths as an actor. I've been an actor since I was 8. It's my, like I have my master's and my, undergrad and everything in performance. And for many, many years, I thought I would be I moved to New York to be on TV and Law and Order, but what happened for me was I hated it. I was totally like, I don't care about any of this. I don't care who's directing the next big show. I don't care. I barely watch TV. I am a junkie for the live experience. I love where I can touch, I can participate, I can, and that's why for me, theater is so much more satisfying. I can see people when I look out. I can connect with them. I genuinely believe that we're having an energetic exchange, right? So when I toured, so I toured the Fringe with a kids show in 2004, and it was totally life-changing. I was like, oh my God, you can write your own shows. Like, I don't have to.
Kids show?
Yeah, I know. And so I came to Toronto. It was my first Fringe, and I was like, oh my God, I saw all these amazing shows. And so I told myself, okay, I'm going back to New York, and I'm going to write a show. And the following year, I came with this show. It was called Girls Guide originally. And it was a show about how I had trained to be a dominatrix, and I discovered I was terrible at it. And because I didn't want to punish anyone. I wanted to like heal them and hold them and rock them. And
my God.
And it was like, oh, I'm totally in the wrong profession. This is awful. But that story it has a funny story, and it has lots of great characters and the people I met at the the dungeon. But that story is also interspersed with discovering ecstatic dance.
Right.
And by the end, in the original version, I invite everybody into my religion of the House of Yes, of where everything is permissible and you're accepted for who you are. And I invite everybody to get up and dance. And in Toronto, they were like, fuck no. Like, no one got up and danced. It was awful. And then I got a 1-star review. And that was my experience in Toronto.
Wow.
But what happened is
I would have been dancing, just so
Thank
you know.
you. I know, it was so because I had done it one night in Portland before I left, and of course everyone got up and danced in Portland, and then I'm like, oh, no one's getting up. But it has a happy ending in that I toured that show all that summer, and by the time I got to Vancouver, I was getting 4-star reviews, and people were like coming to the show.
Vancouver's different, yeah.
But then I worked with this guy TJ Daw, who's this amazing solo show artist, and he really helped me mold the show and kind of get clarity. And so that's the following summer I took it to Edmonton, and I did the show there, and I got all 5-star reviews, and it was sold out, and so it was a it was a good thing in a way, even though it was super painful to get that review. But that started. So what happened from doing Dominatrix for Dummies, which is eventually what that became, was I moved back to Portland. I left New York, and I started a theater company, my Dance Naked. And so now I make shows about sexuality, and sometimes they're solo shows. Like this is my second solo show, but mostly I do ensemble shows with a bunch of women, and I help them develop their own voices.
Someone who hasn't experienced love, and maybe I don't know, can they get something from the show?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I think the show is a love story, first of all. It's an unusual love story. I think it takes you in directions you wouldn't necessarily expect.
Okay.
Because, like, and even in the show, I talk about how I used to devour romance novels. I fucking loved them. I loved that they always ended the same. You declare your love, and most of the time they get married, But real life isn't like that. And part of the show is that process of me learning, like, oh, there's no way to predict what the happy ending is. You actually have to just be in the moment with what you're getting, And one of the realizations I have in the show is like, oh, in this moment, I have a lot of love. And even though I don't know who I'm going to end up with on the porch swing, I have to focus on this moment, And that's where my safety lies, is actually in this moment, And so, so I do think that even if you're in a monogamous relationship, if you've thought about an open relationship, there's a lot to take away from this show, and I think it's hopeful. I think it's funny. I think if you're a Dan Savage fan, you'll enjoy it. It's funny because Toronto is like besides Vancouver, Toronto is the only place I'm going to be that has Dan Savage in the local paper. So I'm hoping that
oh, really?
Yeah, because sometimes in other parts of Canada when I talk about Dan Savage, they're like, who's that? So I'm hoping that that most people will know who he is.
Oh, here, absolutely. Now Magazine is the free weekly magazine,
right?
And that's where he is. And
and same thing in Portland, and
Oh, I didn't realize he was like in so many in those other cities.
He started in The Stranger in Seattle,
okay.
and then The Stranger has a sister paper in Portland. But yeah, he's now he's in the Village Voice, but he in Montreal there's no paper that carries him, or Winnipeg or Edmonton. So
really, I'm surprised Montreal doesn't have it.
I know, I was too. I'm like, this is the city of sin, right? Isn't that what they call it? But you know what though? What was really sweet is despite that, people got it, and they and they told their friends, and people came back and saw the show again, and actually it was nominated for Best Solo Show and Best English Performance, which I was very pleased by, because it's funny. I'm like, awards, whatever, like I don't really think they have a place in art as one thing is better than the other, but what they are good for is publicity and getting the word out. And what I most want is for the people who need to see this show to see this show. And if winning an award or being nominated for an award helps get that word out, then great.
Yes.
And mostly what I'm saying is like, Spirit, if you want people to see this show, like, help me spread the word.
Yeah.
Hence you contacting me and saying, I'm like, thank you, Spirit. Great.
And I should just say, so this is Eleanor O'Brien.
I'm Eleanor O'Brien.
I'll edit that back to the beginning. Welcome to Toronto, and I'm really happy you decided to stop here despite how we treated you 10 years ago.
Do-overs. I'm super excited to have do-overs. And actually, it's been pretty sweet so far. Like, I started with the Poly group, and then I went to Pride, and, I went to Ecstatic Dance. So I'm finding my tribe.
This is sort of like a happy ending where, you could have just said, fuck Toronto, I'm never going to go back there again. But no, you're here again, and I'm sure everyone's gonna love you, and I think the vibe here is different than it was 10 years ago, possibly, and maybe actually you were on some level you were meant to have that bad review, and just to prove to the universe that this is really what you're meant to do, and fuck it, right? I'm gonna do it regardless.
And it did force me to keep reworking and I rewrote that show so many times, because I kept hearing those words in my head. But at the same time, it was a woman who worked, her normal beat was the home and garden section. So she was like so unprepared for a show that had, brown showers and, genital torture. And there was some hard moments in it. So, all right. But yeah, it is a different city. I'm different. I think it's going to be a different experience.
Good for you.
And look, I'm here with you. I'm just totally worth it.
Yay. I'm so happy.
Yeah.